The name of this seminar is Risking for Success. What I have to get you to understand is that it is necessary to risk for success. No one achieves success without taking a risk. And the reason people who achieve success are often isolated from those who haven't is that the people who haven't achieved success have been so afraid of the risk that they haven't been able to get started. Risking is a very strange business, and your ability to risk changes. You're not able to take the same risks that you were when you were young when you get older. And you shouldn't. And you shouldn't measure yourself by the risks that you used to be able to take. You should act correctly now. The problem is that a lot of us have that experience in life. The bad interview. The situation where you're transferred to a place where you've worked real hard to get to, and it's a hostile environment. The advancement that causes you to lose the support of that group of people who loved and nurtured you. See, risking is breaking away from home, isn't it? I mean, when you think about that, risking is breaking away from comfort. And what you have to understand is that ultimately, risking is a leap. That's why it is so hard. Because if it were just a step, if I could go, oh, I want to go from this section to that section, 1 foot on this section, 1 foot on that section, pretty stable, huh, folks? Watch this. I'm here, but if I want to go from this section to that section, I don't have much room to do this, and I got to... Not bad, huh? And I didn't... Don't you dare applaud. Not bad, huh? Walla, walla, walla. But if the leap required that I did 2 sections and I only had this amount to do it, I'm not going to even try it in front of you people. I'd have to do a lot of thinking. How would I do that? Can I use a stick in the middle somewhere? What I'm saying is the leap is a terrifying act. This little leap, by the way, from here to here, okay? I had to do some thinking about that. It was in my comfort zone, but I had to do some thinking about it. Why? Because I have shoes that have leather soles that are very slippery. This is a kind of a slippery situation. I didn't think of planning this risk terribly beforehand. I didn't have much of a grip. I could have landed and done something ridiculous to myself. That's a risk. And I don't know whether I illustrated the point that much better, but it's a risk. If you think the risk that you're about to take is going to kill you, and you focus on the risk alone, the risk will drive you crazy. You will not prepare for it. You will not know what you're doing. And when you achieve any degree of success, what you actually achieve is not a sense of I can do it, but a sense of I was lucky. Do you understand what I mean by that? If you're not preparing and you don't have a sense of being in charge of the risk, taking a risk successfully feels like I guessed the right horse. You don't grow in such risks, and you don't gain the self-confidence that makes you feel I can do it. Now, what I have to say here this morning is that everybody in this room has already taken plenty of risks. You may not realize it, but there isn't anyone in this room who hasn't taken risks. I want you to think for a moment of the single most important, most dangerous risks you ever took. The risks that we're talking about are for something that's better, but the only risk that really lasts, now hear me because this is critical today, the only risk that really lasts is the risk to be a self that you want to be better. To risk to be a success in a foreign land, sir, I think that's a great idea. But to risk to believe that you can do it any place you go is the greater risk. To believe that you have the capacity, that you will always land standing on your feet, that somewhere, someplace, where you go, you'll be doing it because you are the kind of person who can find yourself in your group, at your thing, succeeding no matter where you go. Because you bring it all with you. The people who are afraid to risk are afraid that if they take the leap, what they will leave on this side of the gap is all they've got. You see, the risker, hear this, the risker in midair is carrying everything he needs with him. The risker, freed from all the bounds of society, expectation, is the winning force. This may be hard to grasp. What you have to risk for, therefore, is to be that kind of person who can take those risks. What this spiral of risking that we're going to be talking about is driving you to is to become a person who is independent, able to let other people be free, and willing to take the risks to be his or her best. That person is ultimately free to do what he or she has to do. That's why you're risking. Most risks are practice risks. Most of the risks you took in life, in school, the quizzes that made you, guess what we're having today, class? A surprise quiz on last night's homework. And you go, because you copied it, or you did, and you don't know anything, right? And you're feeling like an idiot, and you fail or you succeed. And if you succeed, does that mean you're good? If you fail, does it mean you're bad? You don't know, but a lesson gets taught to you. And you are the accumulation of all these lessons and practice risks. And the problem is that most of the risks you have taken in your life, you have taken without being fully mindful of them. You have not said to yourself, I'm going to give this everything I've gotten. You don't do that. You say, oh, well, this is what, history tomorrow? Oh, Civil War. Did we have a Civil War? What was that? I wasn't around. Well, so why? I mean, you understand what I'm saying? We don't really get into it. I have to learn 5 new verbs. Why? In French. Am I going to Paris? No. Why do I need to learn them? Do you understand? The motivation is very, very thin. And because the motivation is thin, our testing of ourselves is not highly determined. It's very different to someone say, learn these 4 verbs, or run, Harry, they're going to kill you. I mean, learn these 4 verbs. Oh, well, I mean, run, Harry, they're going to kill you. You're going to see how fast your feet will carry you. You're going to test your maximum. And most of us go through life, I'm sorry, being untested. And then discovering at some moment, usually later on in life, that they wanted something. Gosh, all my life, I really wanted to be this. And now that I see it for the first time, I doubt my ability to take that chance. I really would like to be this, but gee, I went to school for something different, and my family income depends upon doing the something different very well. How can I give all that up to be this, which, gee, I really would love to be this. But you're not used to taking risks for yourself. The most important truth that you can learn is that all of your risks past the training stages, all of your risks in life should be getting you ready to take risks for a life worth living. Your life on your terms. You should be risking along the road of your best self, your best life, your greater awareness, your growing truthfulness. Imagine the best skills you have now. Imagine a self 20 years earlier, looking at yourself now with your skills. You know the thing you thought you could become? How you would have admired this? Now imagine criticizing yourself then for not being what you are now. That's very heavy duty. Where do you start? You can inhibit yourself drastically, but you never inhibit yourself more by not knowing your weakness and accepting your weakness as the place where growth occurs rather than where you trip up. The strength is where the giving occurs. It's not where the satisfaction occurs, it's where the giving occurs. The purpose of life is to discover your gift. Risking has to involve this premise. The purpose of life is to find your gift, develop it, and build it into its strength. That's the purpose. You're here for no other reason. How do I know this is true? Because everything you cherish on this planet that was not here naturally was put here by someone who found their strength and found their talent and developed it. The meaning of life is in giving your gift away. And how do I know that's true? Because these things wouldn't be here unless the people who had developed their talent and developed these things hadn't given them away. Do we need any bigger proof? Does anyone want to take me over the coals on that? I'm not going to let you anyhow. Because it stands for itself. It's just too obvious. The problem is it's so obvious it sheds a light on what's wrong in your life. And what's wrong in your life is that if you are not in pursuit of the gift, if you're not risking to find out what your gift is, how much of it you got, and how to develop it, you're living the wrong life. There's no other way to describe this. And the reason you're unhappy is that you're lonely for the self that you thought you could be. Who wants to go through life without growing into their best? What's it all about? Okay, everybody, time has come to be real open, all right? Why don't you take it from the middle position?
To make people feel comfortable.
To make people feel comfortable. To make people feel comfortable. Well, that's very, very complicated. Because it's not, I perceive that as a derivation of a set of dynamics of trying to be a peacemaker. Okay? That's not a strength. That is your weakness. The strength is telling people when you're hurt. The weakness is being afraid that your opinion is going to offend someone, so you want to be friends with the world. And it sounds to me, I would guess, that you had an unapproachable mother. There's someone in the family that if you spoke out to, and you expressed your feelings openly, that you ran the risk of a war starting. Someone was very short-tempered.
Keep fishing.
What?
Keep fishing.
That's not fishing. See, when you have a desire to make people comfortable, it must come from being around people who are uncomfortable, that in their discomfort caused you pain. Who in your life was uncomfortable?
My mother.
That's what I'm saying. How is she uncomfortable?
She was uncomfortable in her marriage.
And if you came to her with one of your problems and you said, why don't you get divorced, what would she have said to you?
She was afraid.
And that fear would have done what?
Threatened her security and
hurt her.
And hurt
so
her.
Your mother's marriage to your father was a hurtful relationship to you.
Okay.
It has to be. It's an unhappy marriage,
yes.
Unhappy home. Therefore, that was hurting you. So for you to be able to say, I hurt to your mother made her to have discomfort. Your strength is the capacity to express your truthfulness about your feelings openly. Your weakness is covering that up by trying to make peace for everyone. And I fished right the first time, right into the center of the body of the water.
Being dependable.
Well, Mr. Undependable. But that's the weakness. When you think of the times you have screwed up, you're just not there for anybody. Because see, let me just tell you how this goes. It's very strange. The strength can be dependable. That's the strength. The weakness is to be undependable or to be dependable to a fault. To be so dependable that you don't let other people be free. You get right into their life and you end up controlling them. My strength is my honesty, remember that? My weakness is my dishonesty. But I can also be honest to a fault. How'd you like to get in an argument with me when I chose as a way to get at you to tell you everything that was wrong with you? Wouldn't that be a nice 30 or 45 seconds? because you couldn't stand it much longer. Trust me. So the weakness is the overextension and the opposite of the strength. Okay, some more of this. This is
Intuition.
intuitive. Okay? That's wonderful. But the weakness is that you become thick as a brick and don't get it. You just, in someone else's life, you can say, gee, I know what's going to happen, you should take care of this, and you can read 3 or 4 lines of history that are about to happen. You can make accurate predictions. But when it comes to an area that you're threatened by, your intuitiveness goes out the window, and you can't even see the truck coming right in the way. It's the blindness to the intuition. It's being thick as a brick.
I think my strength is being smart and analyzing details.
Notice how he said that. Everyone else would have said smart. He says, he hedges. I think my strength is being able to analyze details. I think we're covered. He may be wrong, but he didn't say, I'm sure that. The man hath the soul of a consultant. You see, everything you say about yourself gives you away, and even if you're trying to correct it so that you don't appear weak, it's all there. Because if you appear strong, it'll appear too strong, which will reflect the weakness. Making other people feel comfortable. Where would that come from? Do you understand? You're totally exposed and transparent whether anybody else gets it or sees it or not, because they will pick up the totality of you, and when you're trying to take a risk, they will see the truth of you, and you will be in your own way. Oh, now we have to answer this. Attention to details. Cannot see the forest for the trees. Gets lost in the details. Can make a detail so important that the detail can be used as an excuse for blocking the forward progress. And a tendency to be able to see things, but not to be able to sort them by value. Okay, this is wrong, let it go. This is wrong, this is let it go. We'll keep the flow going. The flow's the most important. No, we got to hold that here. We got to hold that. We got a dam being built. The water's going. Everyone says, what's holding this up? Well, there are a few things that aren't exactly right. And that's what kills it. Some things matter, some things don't matter. If everything matters, then nothing matters. Do you understand that? And that's what the person who gets caught in details loses. More on this? This is critical to understanding the things that get in the way of you being able to take a risk. You know, when you take a risk, there's a loss involved. At the moment of taking that leap, me climbing to the next stone, I'm saying, oh my God, I can feel it in my back all of a sudden. I didn't feel it in the other fishing place, but I can suddenly feel it. And I don't know whether I have the strength in my leg to lead, and I don't have the room to go, and I don't want to do this, and I don't want to fish. I'd rather play cards. You know, every part of me is going bananas inside. I don't want to do this. But at the moment of risk, you start sorting the evidence to win your point. And if the point is, I shouldn't risk, and let me give you 150 reasons why I shouldn't, you'll get 150 reasons. Reality is neither good nor bad, right or wrong. It's just there. You know you're not going to get out of here alive. Anyone doubt this? At the end of this, they kill you. You do all this hard work. You vote in the elections. You do jury duty. You bring up kids. You pay your bills. Right? You make your contribution to society lesser or greater, and they kill you. At the end of it, you're dead. I'm sorry. Is there anyone who didn't know that? Well, I say to you, if you're going to die your own death, you might as well live your own life. Now, what's wrong with that? They punish you by taking it away from you. Why not live it? Am I speaking a language that sounds unrealistic? John Greenleaf Whittier once wrote, "The saddest words of mouth or pen are these: it could have been." I want you to know something. It doesn't need to be that way. You can have your life. You can only have your life. You cannot be what someone else did. And indeed, if you try to walk in another person's footsteps to become them, you will surely fail even if you become them, because what you were put here for was to become you. You were incarnated, given the divine spark to become you, not to imitate. And if you try to do it someone else's way, you are doomed to failure, because their way, the successful person's way, has the dynamics of the successful person's past failures and lessons learned and character development, because everything depends on everything else. It took everything you did in your life to get to this place, to be sitting in this seat today. It took everything. Why do you think you could possibly imitate someone else's life? And to hold a child up by comparing them to Abraham Lincoln or Albert Einstein is foolish. It's absolutely silly. Because the only person who would hold you up to such an ideal is a person who feels slagging in their own self-image. Now, what I want you to get from today is to understand that you can succeed and win, but only as yourself. That your success is not unlimited. It's not unlimited. It's limited by what you have. Now you have to hear this. It will be possible to use the techniques that you're going to learn today to overcome, to go out and make $1 million. But if that's all you're doing, it may not be a success. What's the point of becoming a billionaire if you don't feel comfortable about yourself? I'm talking about the success that generates success. I'm talking about the success that makes where you are right now feel successful, because you realize you're on the road to success, and therefore, since you're on the right road, you can enjoy the ride. We're going to the mountains. Are we? That's great. But we're in the farmlands right now. I know, because you have to go through the farmlands and the alluvial flans and then up the windy roads to the mountains, because that's the way you go. So, does that mean I hate being in the farmlands? Are you going to do that to yourself? Don't let anyone put you down for where you are on the trip. The problem with many people is they hang around the lowlands so long that they despise themselves for being there. Okay, maybe you have tarried too long at one particular step in risking. We're going to fix that. But if the place you're risking to is not a place where you can look at yourself and say, I am what I want to be, and I like myself, and there's a lot more coming, and best of all, I like the ride, I like the trip, I like my life, and I enjoy being myself along the way. That's what I want for you. You know, I've done a lot of thinking about this. As a matter of fact, I spent a quarter of a century thinking about the process of risking. And that's led to some profound discoveries that are going to be given to you in this program. And they were not something that came easy. I had to figure it out. And what I figured out is that risking, first of all, is a skill. And the skill will teach you what to do at the different stages of risking. That's right. Each stage of risking is specific. And there's specific work to be done that you need to be aware of. It's not just doing the right thing, but it's doing the right thing at the right stage. I can't stress how important that is. Because if you move too quickly in the wrong stage, you're going to get a false result that'll convince you that you shouldn't have risked, and you'll get discouraged and you'll give up. Or if you take the right move a little bit too late, things that you have set in motion will have already happened, and you will have destroyed your risk by bringing up a situation that you are supposed to act on, and then you'll miss the moment of opportunity that you've corrected. There are 5 basic stages to the risking process. And the first stage is recognizing the need to risk. And that's important because a lot of people don't understand that the situation that they're in is static, it's stuck. They don't like the situation they're in. They've gotten accustomed to it. People, for instance, can be in a marriage, and after the first year they know it's no good. But they stay there for 15 or 20 years. So recognizing the need to risk is critical. You can be in the wrong job, and you knew you were in the wrong job 3 weeks after you settled into it. But you didn't risk, and so you got accustomed to being there. You got retirement packages. You got bought out, and pretty soon the thing that got bought out was your wish to recognize that you're a risker. You need a wish to risk. Now, the first stage of risking, recognizing the need to risk, is powerful because puts yourself in a stage that most people want to avoid. It's acknowledging the discontent in your life. Acknowledging that, gee, I'm not happy here. Or there's more that I want. I'm not satisfied with this situation. This isn't good enough. That answer that I got from my boss wasn't what I wanted. This is not making me happy. It's acknowledging your discontent. I'm not saying that you have to do more or earn more. I'm saying you have to risk for what's right for you. You may be risking for actually less things, but the things that will make you happy. The second stage of risking is the stage of gathering information. It's adding to your power. It's beginning to build the momentum after you've acknowledged that you need to risk. What opportunities do I have? What options do I have? What can I do about it? Well, there's a way to go about this. And there's some keys that you have to understand here, because if you violate the keys, you also can destroy the risk. For example, in the second stage of risking, you don't want to be telling a lot of people about it. It's no one's business. And what happens, and this is what messes people up, in the second stage of risking, when they're finding up all this information, they start telling people who aren't prepared to risk, or who don't want them to risk, or who may be affected by their risk and get scared. All the people who get told only come back with negative reinforcement and destroy you. You need to build momentum in the second stage. It's about going for it, but you're not going for it. You're planning to go for it. The third stage of risking is when you've gotten the information and you've looked at yourself and your life and you say, I'm not happy here. I know what I have to do. I'm doing it. You've already decided to do it. What you're waiting for is the set of opportunities that you think would be in your best favor to appear, or to make those opportunities appear. You know, the opportunities are there, but deciding that you're looking for the opportunity is very often the thing that makes the opportunity appear. For example, I don't know whether you've ever spoken in front of people, a group, a small meeting. There's a big difference standing up in front of a bunch of people who are drinking coffee, chatting with each other, and pretty much bored with what you have to say. You're not going to give a great talk, as opposed to coming into a meeting where everyone's been waiting for you. They want to hear what you have to say. They value you, and they're really, really anxious for the information you have to give. You're so much better with a good audience. Well, that's what this is about. When you commit, you're really deciding that you are waiting for an audience, but deciding that you're going to risk makes you a good audience for the opportunity, and therefore the opportunity arises. You create the opportunity by really wanting to go ahead. Now, I know that sounds like double talk, but it's not, because you've seen other people much less talented than you are, much less educated, not as nearly as bright, not as good, succeed. We call them bosses often, don't we? And why do they succeed? Because they wanted the opportunity so badly that when it appeared, they grabbed it. They were committed to going ahead, even though their motivation may have been less than admirable, or they may not have been the best person, or they may have been greedy. They were committed. I want to bring you to that set of commitments. That's the third stage of risking. Fourth stage of risking is going for it. That means going for it. It doesn't mean sitting back. It's the leap. The fourth stage of risking, well, you really cannot describe the fourth stage because it's the product of stage 1, 2, and 3, and it's also anticipating the fifth stage of risking. It exists in between. It's very, very quick. The moment of risk is, let's do it, let's sign, I'll take it, we go. I mean, it's very, very quick. But the point is, for people who are addicted to risking, that's the stage they think about all the time.
And if you don't do any planning, you find yourself very often at the stage of taking the risk, the leap, before you've done any of the planning, and that's when people get damaged, because they get panicked. The worst damage you can do to yourself is taking the fourth step of risking unprepared, because then you're almost sure to fail, and the damage that's done to you is not failing because you don't even take the risk. The damage done to you is backing off. The damage done to you is the belief that you don't have a chance of succeeding, or that you should stay in stage one and not complain for the rest of your life. That's what I want to get you out of the rut from. I want to lift you up from that previous sense of failure. I know you failed before, we all have, but I want you to get the courage of knowing the reason you failed is not because you're unworthy, it's because you didn't know the skill. Okay? The fifth stage of risking is the stage of risking where a lot of damage happens. It's the stage of getting used to the risk, because you don't know what it's going to be like to succeed at the risk. You think you do, but when you do finally succeed, you're moving at a much quicker speed, you're at a different place in your life, and if you just succeed at the thing that you want, you know what happens? Your friends change, because your friends wish you well, but not that well. So understanding that these 5 stages are critical, and what you have to do at each stage to accommodate to the risk and to become accepting of yourself is what this series is about. This is a program. This is a program that is designed to stay with you for life. As a matter of fact, it will change every time you replay it. You'll never hear the same program on each replay. You'll discover something new. I don't water down what I say. People have said that that's one of my weaknesses, that there's too much information, that I should make it easier for people to understand. But that's not the way all of the research and clinical experience I've had in my life has taught me to be. I want to give you solid information, and it's too much to grasp even on one playthrough. As a matter of fact, some of the times you replay this, you'll want to replay this with a person that you're risking with. Some of the times you'll be playing it alone. But the important thing for you to understand is that this is a living program that will change with you. After you take the risk that you want to take, it's a good time to play it again, because once you succeed, you're never so open as you are in the moment of success. I'm going to be with you for a lot of time in your life, and I'm going to help you take the risk that you're planning now to find out what you want to plan next, and I'm also going to help people in your family take the risks that they need to take to become their best. It's a challenge, and it's a good life, and we're going to do it together. This is a very important beginning. This is where we start our journey together. This is the risk beginning, the first stage. Does that get you? Well, I want to take away some of the anxiety about taking the first stage of risking, because it's understanding that you need to risk. Understanding that you, in your own life, have things that may not be the way you want them to be. And maybe you've settled for things that you don't need to settle for. Now, as you watch this, I want you to be reviewing your own life. This has to do with you. When we go through this, I want you to think about the kinds of risks that you have to take, the people you want to talk to, the people you want to express your feelings to, the people you want to show your passion to, those emotional risks. I want you to think about the things you want to accomplish. I want you to think about the power and the strength that you're trying to achieve in your life. And as you put yourself in your own life watching this, ask yourself, am I happy where I am? What's missing in my life? What do I need? What do I need to be happy? What would be the condition of my life if I were to create it? If I were to write it down on a piece of paper that I would create and say, that's the place I want to be in. I want you to dream. That's right. I want you to dream. And before you go any further, I want you to think about the dreams of your life, the dreams that you gave up. Did you have to give them up? And I want you to think about the dreams that would make you happy now, because this is a time to bring the dream back to life. Pay attention, because the dream you dream may be the success that you're going to risk for.
In the first phase of risking, you are asleep. what can I tell you, folks? You're just sitting there and you're wondering whether or not things are ever going to be any better. But they're not that bad because you've accommodated. And so you're asleep. Each notion to do something better, each question, is this what I really wanted, is automatically answered by the lessons of your head that you have taught yourself. Oh, things are fine. I'm doing okay. It's like going to a 25th high school reunion and seeing people that you haven't seen, and they ask you about your life. You're going to tell them the truth? It becomes scary. And then you go and you see one guy who was a terrible, nerdy guy, and now he's got a big firm in Silicon Valley, and he's a multimillionaire, and he's still a nerd, but he's wearing a very expensive suit, and you realize, gee, he was really successful, but you know, I never realized it. He's still uncomfortable with himself. He's still unhappy. He still breaks out in a blush from here down to here whenever he talks to someone. Now there are 4 or 5 women who remember him in the class who wouldn't even talk to him years ago, but they know he's worth 9 figures now, so they're really talking to him, and he's like dying. And you suddenly realize that you have grown, and that you wouldn't swap with him for anything. You'd love the money, but you wouldn't want any other part of it because you couldn't stand going through the day the way he goes through the day. I mean, the secretary gives him his mail messages or his telephone notes, and he takes a look like this, and he can't even look her in the eyes because he's too shaken up inside. So you realize things at different parts of your life. One is, you aren't doing so bad, and you have succeeded in taking risks, but the truth is, you've fallen asleep. That's what our life is about. They get us into that home, they get us into that car, they get us into a certain situation. You're spending almost everything you make and a little more, and you're in a situation where you're going full tilt. You don't seem to be making any progress. You don't have time in your life to do what you really want to do, and you're spending less time with your friends. When you're on vacation, it's almost so expensive that it takes 3 days to get into spending the money, and you overspend. Are you relating to what I'm talking about? Life gets pulled so fast by you that when you get back to that home after the vacation, it feels so great just to be in this situation where you can go back to sleep again. So what I'm asking you to do to get out of stage 1 is to wake up. Wake up, but carry the dream with you. What is the dream of your life? Why were you incarnated? Why were you put here? Surely this was not a mistake. You were placed here to do something, to be someone. All the getting comes out of the being. You get all those things that you want in life by being the person that you're supposed to be. No one who ever was fully themselves ever walked around needy, because they were so full of themselves they didn't need a lot. People who didn't become themselves coveted everything that everybody else had. So, what were you put here to be? Are you following a career that someone from birth said, you're going to be like me? This is a family of lawyers, and my granddad built this firm, and you're going to be in it. Or, we're a military family. Or, we've always been in politics. And they lay down the law. Are you living your own life? Are you picking up the fallen standard of a parent because of insufficient funding, intelligence, zeal, or bad breaks or health was unable to carry that banner to victory? Are you vindicating your parents' suffering on your behalf? And are you, by your victory, showing the world that in your success, you are proving to the world that your parents, had they had your opportunity, would have succeeded too, because you're a chip off the old block, so when I win, my dad wins. A lot of us do that. Of course, that backfires on you, because when the relationship between you and your parent goes awry, and maybe you catch on to the game, but maybe too late, and you realize that you were being manipulated into fulfilling their unanswered dreams, you become resentful because you gave up your dream that didn't fit in with their plans. And so subtly, with that hurt that turns to anger, which turns against yourself, you end up punishing yourself by becoming a failure in life at the very thing they gave you the opportunity to be. And so you hurt them deeply. So you have to be for yourself in order to be happy. You have to be for yourself in order to please other people, if that's what you're into. By the way, pleasing other people is why people get stuck in the dream. So, what is it that you came over the house to tell me, dear? Oh, you and Harry want to move to Oregon. What's wrong with Maine? You want to move to Oregon. Why? You don't want to move to Oregon. I mean, you'd never be around here. And then you get talked out of those changes and risks by all the people in your environment. In the stage one of risking, people are giving you a lot of pressure and are telling you it's okay to be where you are. I remember I had been working so diligently on, as a matter of fact, it happened to be on a risking project. I've written a book, Risking. I was working on several other things at the time. And because of that, I decreased my private practice, even though to do so was an enormous risk. But what I had to do is I had to gain more knowledge and study the material that I was working with and forge a more cohesive and comprehensive theory of risking and feelings. That's what I was doing. I had to do my own research, and I had no one to pay for it. I wasn't working under a grant. I didn't belong to a hospital. I was a private person doing therapy out of my little home, which was a little farmhouse in suburban Boston, Wayland, Massachusetts. And I said, it's not going to happen here. I need for this method to meet more people. I have to do something. And I looked at the book that I had just written, and I said, you know, this is amazing, because it's up to me to take this risk. So I sold the house. You could sell houses in those days. That was a joke. I sold the house. I paid off all my encumbrances, and with $8,000 in the bank, I had a U-Haul professionally packed, because I wasn't going to get into that. Someone professionally packed a U-Haul. My son and I drove the U-Haul. Actually, he knew more about it than I was, but he was 14, and I had to do the driving. And we towed my wife's old Ford convertible with my Jeep. She drove the Jeep, towing her Ford convertible. As we were leaving the front lawn and about to turn out on the highway, our banker, who had the mortgage in the house, had come by to see this for himself. And he looked up at me. This is a man worth $25 or $30 million. I had $8,000 net worth at the time. And he said, "You're going to California, David?" I said, "That's right, Harry." He said, "The house is mine now." I said, "That's right, Harry." He says, "You don't know anybody out there?" I said, "Right again." He says, "You got $8,000 in the bank?" "I know, because it's my bank and I checked the balance this morning." I said, "Right." He says, "I'll be damned." He says, "I'm worth $26 million. I have 15 branches of my bank. I have money salted away so that if I don't work another day in my life, I'll have a fabulous income forever." He says, "And I'm looking at you, and I have never in my entire life been as envious of another human being as I am of you at this moment." He says, "You're just getting up and doing it." He says, "Where does it come from?" And I said, "The necessity of knowing what I have to do to win on my terms." He said, "Call me when you've made your first million." I said, "If I called anyone, you'd be first on the list." We've had several conversations since then. He's always amazed that everything worked out. And yet he says at the same time, "I knew it all the time. But in that moment, when he put himself in the position of me driving this foolish van, I mean, it wasn't an easy trip. I mean, there are a couple of filling stations in Pennsylvania where we shattered the thing because I didn't know the height of it. And it was an adventure. And I didn't even have a place to move. I made that happen from the road. But it's possible, because I wasn't risking everything. I was me during that jump. I had a plan. I mean, I didn't know how I'd work out the plan, but I had a good idea. And I believed in that dream. And I believed that it was up to me, since it was my idea, to put that risk into action and to go for it. What was I going to do? I could have practiced in Boston and have been easily one of the most successful practitioners in that town. You know, the second week I was in private practice, I had a full practice. I never had to worry about that. I don't know why. It was very easy for me. And I lowered that in order to do my work, and then I gave it all up for something that I believed in. I had no guarantees. I knew it was good stuff because it was my best stuff. That was enough for me. I knew that it was, but I didn't have anyone to say, "That's great, kid. You go and do it." Because I was no kid anymore. I must tell you, the only dangerous thing on that whole trip across, the only thing that gave us any problem whatsoever, was while we were crossing the Mojave, and we tried to do it when the sun was down, we miscalculated our water ration for our Cocker Spaniel, and his nose turned white and gave us the biggest scare of the trip. Other than that, everything went swimmingly. What I'm trying to say to you people is, let's humanize this a bit. You have ideas that are sitting in your head. You have dreams that you want to do something with. But unless you believe that you're the one to make your dream happen, nothing, once more, nothing is going to happen. Why do you think the dream came to you? It was a signal. It was a broadcast from your psyche. Let me explain how that works. Maybe I should tell you how you work as a human being. Everything comes into you from your senses. You smell, you taste, you see, you hear, you comprehend, you integrate. You also have problems and all that, which are based on your defenses, which are leftover ways that you have protected yourself from pain growing up. So there's some distortion. So you are not trusting reality because you know you're a liar. You do, don't you? Yes, yes, yes? Aren't you all liars? Anyone here not a liar? Everyone's a liar, right? You've got to know what you lie about. What you lie about is what you defend about. Hint, dependent people defend about being lovable. Controlling people lie about being vulnerable. And competitive people pretend all the time. So you've got to know what it is you lie about. All right. So the dream is your dream. How do you get a dream? You're taking in all this information all the time. And it suddenly happens that you get an idea. It can be any idea. Gee, what about a fastener that would hold paper in a large ream size together like a paper clip? The new paper clip. You got that idea. And you did nothing with it. You do nothing with it. You got the idea, now finish the idea. You get ideas all the time. Every day of your life, when you are awake, you get ideas. But you don't recognize them and you don't let them in, and the reason you don't let them in is the critical end-all stage of why risking doesn't take place. You have the dream, you need the belief. And you know why it doesn't take place? Because you don't know what to do with the belief. Here's what you do with the belief. You act like a person who would put the belief into action. You just got an idea for a paper clip. I just made this up. I don't know what I'm talking about. A paper clip that'll hold a ream of paper together. I suppose that's valuable today. I don't know. What do you do with that idea? Well, if you act like a person who's used to marketing those kinds of ideas to the stationery business, you go out to the stores and you see what they have in paper clips. You see who's got products like that. You see what the need is. You ask around. It's called conducting a survey, but you do it on your own. And you act as if you're the person with that idea who's about to make $1 million, if it's an idea that can make $1 million. And you put it aside or go ahead with it depending on what you think. You have acted like the person who's come up with an idea that's a good idea. That's all you do. That is the difference between people who do things and don't do things. Everybody says they'd like to write for movies. Has anyone here ever thought of writing a film script? Hands. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 12, 14 people. All right. 14 people would like to do a film. Have any of you ever thought of an idea, wouldn't that be fun to write a film script? Another 6. All right. The point is, or to be in the pictures. or to be in Hollywood, or something like that. Everybody has ideas like this, but few people act on them. I'm a writer. That's kind of the way I think of myself. I act like a writer. When I get an idea for a book or an idea for a film script, do you know what I do? I write it down, because that's the idea of the day. I got an idea for a book during breakfast, an entirely different book. I won't write it, but I know some firm can do it. But I wrote it down, outlined the chapters of the book. It took about 3.5 minutes. Half a glass of orange juice and a cup of coffee later, I had the book idea. It may be something, it may not be, but there'll be 3 phone calls that'll check it out. Because it's coming all the time. If I am acting like a writer, then around me, writing ideas are coming at me all the time. I don't need to look for them. They present themselves. I see them from the point of view of a writer. Ever invite a plumber over to your house for a drink? Very expensive to do that, by the way. Why? Why are you all laughing? Why did you start laughing? I said, very expensive to do that. Because he'll go into the bathroom and he'll come out and say, you know, those pipes under the sink are getting a little green, right? Right? Because with the point of view of the person in his position, he's looking for work. He's looking to see how he can apply his craft. His risking is in noticing your need to take something and fix it. And what he does is he puts you in the position of, you know what'll happen if you don't have this pipe fixed and you take that long trip and you come back and there's water leaking through the wall? Won't it be a mess? It'll only cost $250 today, but if you put it off, thousands of dollars, weeks of being uncomfortable and miserable in a muddy house. You're convinced, except you're still not going to do it. Right? Because it's still too much sell. What I'm saying, and I'm going to stay here till you get this one, because this is critical. You must assume the point of view of the person who received the dream and believes in it. Without that, it doesn't go to the next step. A little bit more on believing, so you get what I mean, because it's not quite as simple as all that. You have a dream, you have an idea. It's your idea, whatever it is. Stop judging the idea. Just accept that here is an idea. The idea has points against it, and it has points for it. None of these points will prove that it should or should not be. They're just points. You get an idea, you have a dream, it's yours, hold on to it. Now you have to find out, is there some way this idea can become reality? You need to believe that it's possible. I remember when I was first talking about my therapy, and in Boston, long-term, multiple sessions a week was very common. Short-term therapy was just starting to become popular. And I mentioned to a former supervisor who was a psychoanalyst, I said, gee, I've increased the length of the therapy hour to 2 hours, and I'm putting them on tape and giving the tape to the patient. And he goes, what an interesting idea. I wonder why no one's ever done that. What an interesting idea, and you have them study it. He was a mentor. He commented on the idea. My other friend who was a psychiatrist, when I said, what, then if you get into trouble in the session, they'll use it in court against you. I mean, that was his first projection of his own lack of support and feeling about himself. It was his own disbelief in his own worth that made him invalidate the idea, because he saw the idea as a way of getting caught. That's really what we're afraid of believing in, because if we really, listen carefully, if we really take an idea and run with it, the way you're going to get caught is people are going to see your inadequacies. Because you're not good enough to do the idea yet. You don't have enough training. You don't have enough background. You don't have the where-how. Nowhere. You're stuck. You have to get a lot of technical backup information to make things happen. You've got to get a lot of information of other sorts. And what you're afraid of when you're afraid of believing in the idea is not so much the idea, but in yourself as a person who's competent enough to make the idea work. The idea that you get is always a challenge to grow up to be in a state where you are worthy of the idea that you got. Don't you see what it is? You're constantly being flagged to a greater goal, your goal, but you don't know enough, or you haven't been trained well enough. Get the training to make yourself happen. Sure, you got to take courses for certain businesses and learn about marketing and sales and all that sort of thing, but what's more important, when you get an idea about something you want, to follow through on it. I went to school with a fellow who was a gifted oboist, wonderful talent. But he was interested in astronomy. And one of his hobbies was taking photographs through a telescope. And no matter how he set up the telescope, he always found out that his pictures were a little bit blurry because they didn't follow quite right. And he figured out something with a electronic measurement of light, which would amplify the light when it would come in, so that he could make the gauge go to a much broader scale. Instead of measuring from 1 to 10, the scale was measuring from 1 to 1.1. It was like 1,000 times greater scale, so he had 1,000 times more control over it. And he got beautiful pictures. And he did it in a way that was totally unusual. He used mirrors in ways that no one had thought of before, because he didn't know what he was doing. And every step along the way, he found himself taking a course at MIT, learning more about mathematics. This is an oboist. He perfected a technique which, because he didn't know enough about science to know that once you get stuck in an area, you should think along that area, he started thinking in terms of temperature. If a thing could follow something to this degree, could he also measure temperature the same way? And he found a way to measure temperature by light distortion. And now he had a system that could measure variances in temperature as small as 1/1,000,000th of a degree. And when they tested the outer rim of the universe and found the differences in minor temperature, they were using his devices. He made a bloody fortune, but he didn't know what he was doing. All along, he was running scared. But what he wasn't afraid of, it was that he was not afraid of being shown up of not knowing enough. He would simply say, how do you do this? How can I find out about this? And his own curiosity and belief that he had something special caused him to create this whole, he actually created an industry. I'm sure he would have much rather been playing the oboe, but it was a fascinating idea that took him by storm. Your belief needs to lead you to adapt the posture and point of view of a person who is acting the way you would act if you had succeeded in your risk. You want to be boss of your company. I want to tell you how to get there. Look at your job tomorrow morning the exact same way. I assume that your boss is a terrific boss, sensitive, positive, looking for the best out of people, wants the company to expand, is fearless to try new ideas, creative and accepting. Ha 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 ha. If that's not your boss, you should become your boss, because you become limited by the boss who is not like that to be less than yourself. And whenever you have a boss who's not conducive to your growth, you inhibit your growth just to get along with the boss. And no matter what they're paying you, how much of a price difference is it worth for you to give up the opportunity to grow into your best? Do you see what I'm talking about? You're undermined in a lot of different ways throughout your life. And no way more importantly than your fear that you're not the person to do the job. Tomorrow morning when you go into work, try the following experiment. Imagine that you're that good boss sitting in your own head. A call comes in, or the first thing you have to do, as you do it, ask yourself, am I doing it the way my boss would want me to do that? Just do everything the right way. Stop fighting it. Stop trying to be right. Stop trying to make your way the best. Instead, do it the best way possible. Act with your secretary, act with your superior the way you should act if you were coming from the boss's point of view. And all of a sudden, something will happen to you. You will see the company's greater good as more important. You will start relating to it in a more important manner. You will start being more helpful to the people around you. You will not be an ego who is difficult to get in control with. You will find yourself getting and taking more responsibilities because it's easier to do them the right way the first time yourself than have to correct a difficult person who will not learn. And all of a sudden people will notice, whether they want to or not, that you're a more helpful person. Ask so-and-so. And gradually, you end up in a situation where you find yourself against irresistible forces that cannot change. And because you have acted so much the better for so long, you have gotten on-the-job training that you were never supposed to get. You've gotten the on-job inner mental training of a person who is seeking to be in control of their own destiny, and then you realize, I can't be that here. And I like the feeling of autonomy that I feel when I act for myself. And I can't be that here. I'm capable of much more. And I have been postponing my time in life, you'll say to yourself. I have been holding myself back. I have been waiting for an opportunity. But when you act in the role and in the point of view of the person you're trying to become, you create the opportunity for yourself before the opportunity appears.
Did you find yourself in that? It's important to me that you really did. Don't expect that you found all of yourself in that. There were some things maybe that you heard you say, oh, that's not important to me. Chances are that they were, because all risks are connected in a certain way, and you learn from every other kind of risk. But I want you to be sure that you understand your need for risking, the fact that you have to take a risk. Did you find that in there? Well, the chances are that you found a key to it in there, but the real key is still in you. This is only a direction. It's a way for you to think about yourself. You have to do some work here. I can't take your risks for you. I don't even want to. I got my own plate full of my risks. But you have to have your dream. Did I make that clear enough? So this whole section that we've gone through is really to help you see your need to have something worth risking for. You are the answer. Do you know that? You are already the answer. You just haven't been asking the right question. I hope this gets that question a little bit clearer in your mind, because the question is the sense of the dream you have to dream. I'll be right back. Stage 2, well, that's when you've decided to risk. That's what this is about. You've decided to do it. You've decided to at least look at it. Now, when you watch this part of the program, I want you to start taking notes as you do, because this is the part where you are aware that there's something that you have to do. And now that you're aware of the fact that there's something that you have to do, everything you learn here is important to you. Yes, it is on the tape. You're absolutely going to be able to come back to this. But I still want you to take notes, because that's what it's about. It's about putting it together in your way. It's about preparing for you, so that everything I say may not seem as important as everything else. I want you to get out of this exactly what's right for you. I want you to take the directions that are right for you, because this is about finding the direction, the next opportunity. Where do you get the training? Where do you go back to school? Who do you need to tell? Where do you find all those things for? I want you, as you listen to this and everything that's said in this stage, to think about what you have to do next. Come on, this is the next step in the stages of risking. Stage 2 of risking is initiating the risk. It has to do with standing forward and deciding that the risk is going to start. I'm going to take a risk. Now, what do I need? It's a stage where you take an inventory. What's missing in my life? What really is missing in my life? How did that happen? Why did I let that develop? Do I need more education? Or do I have too much education that is of absolutely no value to me? And why did I get so much education that means nothing? I mean, I know an awful lot about the Middle Ages, but what time is it? It's in the 1990s somewhere, I think. I mean, it's wonderful to have all these historical perspectives, but if I want to survive, I have to have education that's pertinent and relative to my risk. I need to have skills that are going to help me maximize my forward motion. I need stuff that's pertinent to my life. I don't need stuff that's prerequisites. I need stuff that helps me
develop the confidence of being myself. You know, no matter what educational degree you get, what the degree confers on you in the end is not the knowledge, but the empowerment. Most of you could do psychotherapy, for example, if you were told some simple rules of psychotherapy. The rules of psychotherapy. Try to understand the other person. If you don't understand, ask questions. The questions that you should ask should come from your curiosity. When you understand, repeat your understanding to the other person. Now, if you weren't in your own way, and you felt good about yourself, and you felt loving and kind and generous, most of you have the capacity to be psychotherapeutic. But you go through training and you learn all these other things, but in order to develop that talent, the empowerment of self is the greatest gift that you get, because it's the freedom to act with license. It's the freedom to act as yourself. It's the freedom simply to be yourself without apology or explanation. And that's what we want in life. We just want to be able to be. You know why you hate going over your parents, those of you who hate going over your parents? Because the moment you cross the door, you're 4 years old again, and being told what's wrong with you, that is what's wrong by their standards. They don't like the way you comb your hair. Whose business is it? You know, the truth is, what other people think of you isn't your business, but when it comes to your parents, because you want love and affection from them, you'll do anything to get it. And when you go over there, you hate what's drawn out in you. You know the person you should be with in your life? Magicians. The people you should be in your life are people in whose presence the best self that you are shows itself. If you are in a relationship with someone with whom you cannot be your best, that relationship is doomed anyway. And I don't need to tell you about it. You can fight me on this one, but it's going to be gone within the next year or so. Because you cannot stand the pain of knowing a better self and not feeling able to be the best you are. As a matter of fact, most relationships die. Listen to this, because you know this, but you don't know this. Most relationships die because in order to make the relationship work, you gave up part of yourself to get into the relationship. And it's not just giving up bowling, you know. You gave up part of yourself, a circle of friends perhaps, some autonomy, some freedom of spirit to do what you wanted, like not account for every moment of your blessed life. Oh, I hit a button on that one. And what happens is, the reason a relationship dies is that you get lonely in the relationship. And you know what you're lonely for? You're lonely for the part of yourself that you gave up to make the relationship work. Is there anyone who cannot identify with that? I'm glad, because you're being honest. So in stage 2 of risking, which is the ponderous stage, where you're entertaining what the loss could be. You could be rejected if you tell a person the truth. You could lose your shirt if you made the investment. In stage 2 of risking, you are anticipating everything you need, everything you could lose, and you're deciding whether you really should be taking the risk. You know, sometimes the best risk is not to take the risk. I had a friend of mine who joined me for a late lunch in Birmingham. I don't recall what it was about, actually, at this point. He said, well, I certainly had one of the best business meetings of the year. And I said, well, what'd you have? He said, I told them they could keep their building and I would keep my $75 million. And he was right. That was a great meeting because he made the right decision. And if you can think of it like that, the right decision is the right risk. Sometimes not risking is the best risk, especially when everyone is plowing into you and saying, you got to do it. We're going to all invest together. If it doesn't make sense to you, don't do it. If you don't feel comfortable, you say the magic words. That doesn't feel comfortable to me. That's the only read you get from your consciousness. Your consciousness is this vast collection of all the impressions in your mind that you see, and it comes up with an answer that's usually a feeling. So it says, okay, so we're going to build a house in this plot, it's going to be wonderful. And you say, no, I don't think so. It doesn't feel right to me. Why? It doesn't feel right to me. Next question. You don't need to explain your feelings. You just need to state them. But you have to start stating them. That is the key risk of stage 2. You must state your feelings. This doesn't feel right to me. And also in stage 2, you're asking people, well, how much could I lose if I made this investment? Now, the person who's selling you a phony investment is always going to say, risk? I'm glad you mentioned risk to me. He's got a speech coming. And you can tell because it comes out of this part of the head, not from the heart. You know those speeches? Whenever someone's coming from you from the top of the head, you know how you know you're not listening? You know that it's a lie because you're not listening. You know that right away. And you're waiting for it to be over and you're saying, what is it? You're not listening. You're analyzing. What's this person telling me? So what you say to the person when they start saying that is a simple phrase. And you say, is what you're telling me the truth? Just like that, in the middle of it, and you'll get, and you know, and you say, well, thank you for your interest. I'll think about it, and if I decide, I'll call you. When someone says, there is no risk whatsoever in this, what you need to tell them is, thank you very much. That's the biggest risk I could ever take, because if there's no risk, you're talking about yourself. You're going to take my money and run.
You know, if you have done this right, by this point, you should be saying, you know, it just may be possible for me to do this. It just may be possible for me to make this happen. Because the key here, and if you were paying attention, the key here was for you to find something to believe in, to believe that it's possible. That's what I wanted you to get out of this. To believe that by seeing all the opportunities that were available to you, that you could possibly do it if you put the pieces together. First you dream. Now you believe in the possibility of that dream happening. Your job now is to gain momentum based on your belief. Now you may have to replay this section over again in order to be sure that you understand that. But it's really valuable because once you believe it's possible, opportunities start to come your way because you start to see the opportunity. Believe that it's possible. That belief will create your success. The third stage of risking is the stage of committing. It's about building up a sense of momentum, forward pressure. Belief in the goal is what you needed to get here, and you need to have a dream before that, but now you have to do something different. It's about action now. Well, what is the proper action at this stage? Let me tell you what the proper action is. Now, focus on this because it's critical to your success and behavior. And it's critical for you to understand this as you listen and watch and develop your thoughts about this. You ready? You need to act now in your life like the person who is going to succeed would have acted at this stage in your life. What does that mean? Well, if, let's for example, say that you wanted to be a lawyer. Well, at this stage, a person who wanted to be a lawyer would be making a commitment to go to law school, would be making a commitment to get the funding, to get good grades on the law aptitude tests. The person would be committed to that life and be acting like a future lawyer. I want you to act like the future success. You assume the attitude of the person who will be the success that you're trying to reach, because that's how it happens. Act appropriately to the success, and the success will be yours. If you act like a playboy or someone who has no interest whatsoever in the goal, don't expect to reach that goal. Because if you don't assume the attitude, the success will not be yours. Because the risk only comes to the person with the right attitude. Otherwise, it's just a crapshoot.
The third stage of risking is committing. You've analyzed all the data. You know how many horsepower the car is, and that ping is nothing. They told you don't worry about it. You're going to make it. You're going to commit to the risk. You're looking for the moment to go into action. How much should you tell other people? You don't tell other people. Why do you want to tell other people what you're doing? Other people wish you well, but not that well. Remember that? And if you tell someone about a risk that you're taking, basically what they're going to do is they're going to be thinking of all the reasons they don't want you to succeed. They're like that. They're spoilers. Also, even if they're for you and they love you and you're terrific, the fact that you're taking a risk that they wanted to take and they couldn't take makes them look terrible. I remember one day, I lived in Wellesley, Massachusetts, and I lived in a valley. And one of the things that people on both sides of the street shared was a totally unusable backyard. We had hills. And so we planted them with wildflowers. You know, it's the New England way, you make do. I decided that I didn't want a hill. So I hired a bulldozer, and I had a pickaxe. I was in my residency and not afraid of back-breaking work. I learned better. And I went out there and I cut down my hill, built a beautiful natural retaining wall and a gorgeous terrace, and I actually put on all this footage onto the property. Fellow across the street walks up to me, puts his arm around me, and says, "Come on, we're going for a walk." I said, "What's the matter?" He says, "You're making us look bad." I said, "What do you mean?" He says, "You know what my wife is telling me?" I said, "What?" He says, "That hill has got to go." When you take a risk to do what you want, other people look at you and they wonder, "Oh my God, should I be doing that?" And that's what your risk means to other people. It has nothing to do with you. Everybody is in a foxhole. Everybody is selfish. Everybody is thinking about themselves. And you better know that. I don't care where you come from or what you believe in. Everybody's thinking of themselves. And that's correct. And it's only the fools who aren't thinking about themselves who get in so much trouble that they get in your way. The people who are thinking about themselves are doing okay. The people who are not are in trouble. All right, so the people who are going to stick their nose in your two bits in your business are always going to say the wrong thing to you. So you don't tell people what you're doing unless they absolutely need to know. Kids, we're moving to St. Louis. Ah! They need to know. When you tell people what you have to tell them, it should be because they're directly affected by it. But if you're telling a casual acquaintance about it, and you're secretly bragging, and we secretly do that, what you're inviting is the other person to put you down. Because when you're bragging to another person about the risk you're taking, you are in essence hurting the other person. You're saying, "I can do this, and you cannot." So the other person says, "What a rotten thing to say to me. I bet it won't work. I know a guy who tried that, and he lost his shirt. You know, the last time you risked, Bill, you just about crippled your whole operation." In other words, the person you're going to brag to has enough knowledge about you to just make you feel that maybe you shouldn't be doing it. Are you all nodding agreement with this? You know what I'm talking about. So keep your mouth shut. We know you're insecure when you're risking, but don't talk to people unless they're directly involved in the risk itself. It's none of their business. And the only thing they're armed to do is to give you trouble. And it's not that they want to give you trouble, it's that when you cut down your hill, he doesn't want to cut down his hill. And now he's got to come up with arguments why he can't cut down his hill. And he can't come up with them. Why do you do these things? The whole question is, you are doing them to achieve success. You risk for success. But the success you risk for should be a success that you define in your own terms for you. It shouldn't be someone else's notion. Whatever anyone else is going to tell you about your success, it is basically a watered-down version of what they would do if they were in your shoes. They don't know your shoes, and they don't know your life, and they don't know you. So people cannot tell you what to do. What you're looking for is a mentor, someone who can teach you, someone you can talk to who really doesn't have an opinion, but asks the right questions. The mentor always asks questions that are a little hurtful, but are presented in a loving way. Is that the best you can do? Do you really want that? Well, you're going to hurt a lot of people if you take that route. Are you aware of that? The mentor asks the same questions you would ask yourself, but you try to brush over them, but the mentor puts those questions in your face. The mentor can be trusted because the mentor doesn't profit by your gain or loss, but is studying you as another person who is alive and risking. You risk for success. Success does not come to you. Success is something that you continually build. When you finish the phase where you're committing and have decided to move ahead, you've decided to go for that element which is necessary to your success. You take all of your energy and you start to gain momentum. The end of the commitment stage, stage 3, is the stage where you have decided to pass and you are waiting for the moment to move. You're measuring the road. You know what you have to do. You are resolved in your intent. You are going to do it. You are waiting for when, and you know that when is not going to look safe. It's going to look hazardous. But you're going to make it safe by anticipating it. An opening's going to be coming up there. I'm going to back up from this sucker, give it some gas, so that I will be already at passing speed before I approach him. I figured out how I can compensate for this, and I've lengthened the road in my own head. You're going to do something at the moment of truth. There's a thing that happens to people, though, who get stuck in this phase of committing. Isn't it strange, you know, how could you get stuck in the phase of committing? You're about to go, and then you're not about to go. Anyone ever been in an on and off relationship? You know exactly what I'm talking about. The other person gave you all the signs that it was going ahead, and then the first thing that went wrong, they pull back. The reason for this is that at the committing stage, you have made a list. Things that could go right, things that could go wrong. You've made another list. Why I want it, why I don't want it. And when you spend so much time making these lists and internal dialogues with yourself about what you want and don't want, you can talk yourself out of the risk. At the moment of commitment, you say, I want it. I know there's a downside. I recognize the downside. I accept that there's a downside. I will prepare for it, but I want this. That means I'm going to make it happen. Then comes the most treacherous moment of all risks. It's a moment that is so scary that merely mentioning it usually stops people from thinking about risking. You could get killed. You could lose your shirt. You could lose everything you own. She'll leave you. What are you talking about? It's the worst case. It's the damage that you could suffer when you take the leap. That's the point of no return. It's when we commit, we decided to do it, and we've hit the gas, and we're in the risk, and we're saying, I'm alone in this. No one else can help me. I've got to make it work, and I have to succeed, and I prepared for it. I know the warning signs of my vehicle if it starts sputtering. I know where to get the extra money if I get into trouble. I'm just going for it. I'm not going to worry about anything but making it work now. That's where my attention is. That's where it's going to stay. And unless I'm diverted by something else, I'm going to keep my attention on this. And anything that seems to be going wrong will get my full attention because it's one of the things on the list that I've been looking for, and I'm going to fix it before it gets worse, and I'm going to keep on risking and going. That's how you save yourself. And that's when it's really scary, because guess what happens? Something always goes wrong. And for the person who's not committed at the point of risk, whatever goes wrong becomes the excuse for backing out of the risk. There will always be a reason for giving up the risk in the middle of the risk. And there's never a reason for going ahead that's as strong or as valid as the belief that you must do it for you. And whatever you've figured out on paper, or how many courses you've taken, or what you did to yourself to prepare yourself, nothing is going to get through except believing in yourself at this point. And unless you're willing to finally give up all the self-doubt at the moment of risk and saying, I deserve it, I'm good, I want this, God, I want this. If you're not willing to say that to yourself and do it, it doesn't happen. And the reason it doesn't happen is because risking is a selection. There are 1,000 paths, and you have said, this is the one I think that will work, I'm almost sure of it, go. All of a sudden you get an obstacle in the path. What do? I was speaking to a young lady who was telling me that having chosen, after 4 or 5 unfortunate relationships, a man that she thought was wonderful, the relationship was worse, it turned out, than any of the others before. She said, I've paid my dues in life. Why are there stones in the road? And I said, because you're looking at it wrong. When you pay your dues in life, there are still stones in the road, except you know they're going to be there. So instead of tripping over them, you're looking and saying, I wonder where the stones in this road are. And that distinguishes successful riskers from people who are just taking chances and whoop and slip and fall on their face. There will always be stones in the road that will be large enough to convince you that you will trip. And if that's how you want to be, you will never take a successful risk. But if you have decided that you're going to get there, so there's a stone in the road, well, we can walk around that one, because you've been planning it. As soon as you have been aware of the fact that it could be there, you say, could that be a stone in the road? Is credit going to get tougher? Will they increase the price of that? Will she really back out on me? And you start thinking ahead of time. Instead of going on faith alone, you go on your smarts. And you don't expect there to be anyone to save you. That's the whole thing about this critical stage of risking. You give up the belief that anyone is going to be there to take care of business for you. You're it. That is a critical point in your life, because unless you know you're it, you cannot save yourself. Unless you know that, there's no possibility that you're going to have the courage to follow through.
You know, I'd like to congratulate you, but I'm almost afraid that if I congratulate you, you'll forget the important point, because it's such a critical important point. This point is about staying in the right groove, and the groove is the right attitude, because it's the attitude that's going to carry you. And I don't mean it's a phony attitude. Come on, you can tell that I'm more serious than that. It's not that kind of thing. It's an attitude where you're saying, what should I be doing now if I want to get to success? Assume the right attitude, believe in the dream. We're getting there. Just wait, we'll get you there. I want to get something really clear with you. If this were a long section, this whole program would be a fraud. That's right, because this is a short section. It's about the leap itself. That's right. Think of an Olympic athlete. Years of practicing, going to do the broad jump. Well, that person practices and practices. The moment of risk is a few seconds, and it's over. But everything went into that. The person believed, they had a dream, they acted like the person, and now they get up there, the crowd is roaring, and they risk. It's a short moment. But if I made more of this than to tell you that this stage is the result of the 3 stages before, I would be leading you astray. Yes, you have to know some things about this stage. You have to pay attention. That's the key. You have to pay attention to all the work you've done, all the belief you have, all the dreaming, all the attitude that you developed. You have to make it work for you now. It's about concentrating. It's about focusing. It's about doing it. So as you watch this, focus your own attention and think how you'll take that step at this stage yourself. Take a deep breath. Ready? On your mark. Get set. Go.
The 4th stage of risking is a very quick stage. It's there. I mean, it feels like the longest stage because your heart's in your throat, and it's pounding. Your palms are sweaty. You're frightened. And at this stage, all of your attention has to be on the risk. But it has to do, there's a phenomenon of risks, that risks at this stage have a way of getting all your attention. You know? The compulsive gambler goes to the racetrack, the wife's sick at home, the kid's got pneumonia, the bill collectors are all around screaming, right? This guy's got $100 on a nag. When that horse is rounding the track, he's not thinking of any of those things. He's thinking of that horse coming in the last quarter, and now he's down with, you know, it's that whole nonsense. And he's totally there for that period of time. If he could only concentrate on anything else in his life, he wouldn't have a gamble, because life would be a sure thing if he could concentrate like that. But risks have a way of riveting our attention. But reality is about risks. When you see someone doing it for real, it's always attention grabbing, because you know that anything could happen, mistakes could happen. That's what makes life exciting, because mistakes can happen. And it's at this stage, taking everything and shooting, where all the mistakes will happen. The only way you can prepare for success is to know the danger that you're going to be facing, so that you're not surprised by it. Because the anxiety at the risking moment is great enough. Why should it be compounded by the surprise of discovering something even bigger? Are you with me on this? It's really important that you get this, because the reason you have probably backed off from the important risks that you wanted in life was because you didn't plan well enough. You wanted to make it all good. I'll do this, and then I'll do this, and then I'll do this. What about worst-case scenarios, when you sit down and say, well, what could happen if they didn't do this? What's my backup plan? How would I do that if the plane didn't come in then? You have to start thinking like that, so that when you go, you know you have the comfort of the option. Just having the option. But at the point of no return, there isn't an option. The option is to go ahead And the option is one that you must learn beforehand. You save yourself in the past by hitting the accelerator, not the brake. Because when you hit the brake, you're not in control of the road behind. The only road you control is the road ahead, because you're now crouching out another person behind you. So you save yourself by going ahead. And you have to be prepared to do that. And it's the preparation and the belief and the commitment to going ahead that gives you the power to succeed.
I told you to be short, but it's scary, isn't it? Because in that second, so many things can happen. It flies by. In other words, you have to do it like one of those downhill skiers racing it, the course in their own mind, thinking where they're going to be, having the rhythm set up. Yes, it's a lot of preparation to this stage. And if you have to think about it, you're probably lost. That's why your attitude is so critical. That's why your belief is so critical. That's why the dream is so critical. Because putting the belief into the attitude is going to make the risk happen. Saying, I'm going to take the risk right now, isn't going to be anything in your favor of the success. I hope you learned this. You know, before you even go ahead, go back and play the section over again. It's short enough. And the reason I want you to play it again is to realize that this is the moment of truth. And the moment of truth is nothing more than the extension of what led up to it. The moment of risk is short. It's supposed to be short. But your attention has to be before the risk, during the risk, and after the risk. I want you to pay attention to that. And again, it might be in your best interest to go back and replay this all over again, this section on the moment of truth, because the moment of truth is going to affect you. But you need to understand that the moment of truth is rooted in preparing, believing, dreaming, the right attitude. All of it comes to a head right here. You don't invent the risk at the moment of risk, you fulfill it.
Stage 5 is a tricky part of risking. Because when you reach it, you feel relief that you got there. But the point is, when you get there, you're in a whole new set of unfamiliar circumstances. You're not where you thought you would be. No matter what you risked for, you always land in a different country. Do you know what I'm saying? Gee, I did it, and I didn't think it would be like this. So you became president of the company, and you finally discover something, that no one talks to you in a friendly way. It's very lonely being successful. People react to the successful person as if you're a thing. And all of a sudden you feel isolated from other people. And people attribute things to you because people project onto the successful person the role of authority. And they start treating you the way they think about their father or mother. And all of a sudden you're being dealt with attitudes. And people will address you and say, well, you always have kept us down. I've been in the job for 15 minutes. How could I always have kept you down?